back in first grade, so obviously going way, way back. And I was a public school kid, so like we'd have a 1 hour of art a week. There was this teacher who would push around this cart, one classroom to another for the all kinds of art supplies in there, and extra paper, construction paper, scissors, whatever. And she came into our class and informed us there'd be a competition, school district wide, not just our grade level, not just our school district wide. And I don't remember what it was themed by. Again, this was long ago. But the thing I remember about the competition is that our classmate Ashley, a first grader out of the entire school district, won this competition. And it turns out that she won because she was the only person to enter it. Out of like 4 or 5 eligible schools, out of all the different grades, out of even her own classroom, one person bothered to enter this competition and won. And it can feel silly to be thinking about a first grade example, but Tim Ferriss in 4 Hour Work Week, which usual asterisk next to Tim Ferriss's name, made a lot of his money selling Brain Quicken, which as far as I'm concerned, my opinion, seems to be kind of maybe a little snake oil supplement-y. So, different judgment there. But as far as his business goes, he's a great writer, very clear thinker. And he's got this point there, like when he was mentoring students at first, when you go out and visit schools and speak at colleges, he had a competition or it's even just sort of a contest. People could enter, and he would select some number of people who entered, and then they'd get a trip paid by him to travel around the world or get mentored in business, whatever it was. Pretty worthwhile thing. And literally nobody applied. That if a single college student had stepped up to that and just applied for it, and he wasn't asking for a bunch of money, wasn't asking for a bunch of time, he just to apply, would have got it. And I see this sort of thing all the time from my end in terms of, obviously for Enjoy GameDev the other day, we had spots where people could apply for sponsored tickets. I'm actually grateful to say we were able to sponsor nearly everyone, or find a sponsor for nearly everyone who applied for a sponsored ticket, because so few people actually applied to have sponsored tickets. The same thing happens in Gamketo Club, where we have a setup there where people on Patreon can help sponsor members. People who wouldn't be able to afford the club dues otherwise, which, there's not usually an application process. Anybody can just join Gamketo Club, just going to the site. But for people who, if the dues would be tough for them, you can apply to have those covered by someone on Patreon. And there are far fewer applicants to that than people imagine. I think people assume we are buried in applications. Most people intimidate themselves out of applying. And I can see this straight in the website metrics in terms of the amount of people who are checking out that possibility, and they're not asking for a lot of information, there's no application fee, etc., and still back down from it, deciding that maybe it's not worth a shot. Maybe they don't get their hopes up in case it doesn't work out. Now, there are definitely things in the game industry and in game development that are massively oversaturated, and whether we're talking about putting a game up on Steam, and there's now maybe 25, 30 of those a day, talking about putting out a game on mobile, of which there's probably 500 new games a day on mobile. Those aren't made up or exaggerated numbers, by the way. You can look those up. Those are pretty close to real numbers on both platforms. Those sort of things are absolutely oversaturated, hyper-competitive. You have to do a lot to differentiate your work. That's not really the kind of thing we're talking about. I'm talking about specifically these other kind of things where it doesn't take a lot of information, doesn't take a lot of time, takes no money. I'm also not saying, apply to everything that costs money with some sort of application fee. It's its own kind of questions. But that if you don't put yourself out there for a chance to speak, for a chance to get your work presented, to have a chance to get your work on a shared, etc., whether you're not contacting press, whether you're not contacting podcasts you might want to be on, including Gamketo community, which likewise I get some emails people want to be on the podcast, probably fewer than people would imagine from the amount of listeners we get on our podcast, but it's something that you got to be comfortable putting yourself out there. Too many people kind of scare themselves out of competing or scare themselves out of even putting their name in the hat before they even bother. And if you can even win at the competition having a little more confidence than they do, then you're actually going to be having a huge advantage in terms of all kinds of opportunities, all kinds of things that might be able to help you out, people who are eager to help if they only know that you're looking for it. And yeah, obviously game development's my usual message, but it's equally true if you're a musician, if you're a dancer, if you're a writer, if you're whatever your talent, skill, focus might be. Those are things where there's going to be opportunities for somebody to say like, hey, does somebody want to give a talk real quick? Somebody want to show off their work real quick? I remember, so part of what helped connect me to Indiecade, before I had even submitted my first game to Indiecade, was there was a little event we had. This was Art History Games in Atlanta, and I had traveled into Atlanta for it, and local IGDA chapter had some micro talks, and we could just enter our name just right on a clipboard if we wanted to talk. And I think a lot of people in the room just kind of decided like, it seems like a lot of pressure, they didn't really prepare for it. And I just said, what the heck, it's 3 minutes. yeah, let's do that. So I put my name on the board, and it was actually someone in that audience who saw my presentation there and said, you should submit this to Indiecade, and that's what helped lead me to my involvement initially with getting the game into the festival, and in the time since, many years later now, helping to organize it. It came from that moment of seeing a clipboard, not being intimidated, and saying, you know what, yeah, what's the harm in it? Let's, try it. So apply your stuff, put yourself out there, don't be afraid of it. And the other thing can great happen, this is great, right? Sometimes you might enter yourself in the thing and figure, hey, maybe if I'm the only person entered, maybe I'll succeed at it, whatever. But other times you might find out that, yeah, in fact, solid 25, 300, whatever people actually did apply, and you still came out on top. And how cool is that sometimes? I mean, one of the nice things about these competitions, or about contests, about whatever they are, and occasionally they're random, occasionally they're competitions, but can be this outside validation that, yeah, your stuff's maybe a little better than giving yourself credit for, because it'd be so hard to see from the inside. When people use the phrase Dunning-Kruger, we're often talking about someone who thinks they're smart, but they're not. Thinks they're talented, but they're not. But they're so not, they can't tell. Dunning-Kruger actually refers to any mismatch between self-assessment and reality. And all the time you'll find lots of really talented people doing good work who they're actually really hard on themselves. They don't think they're that good. Artists who think their work isn't good, musicians who think their work isn't good, game programmers who think their work isn't good. And often what's happening is their work is good in part because they have that really, really demanding taste that they can that they keep looking at it and seeing what's wrong with it, and allows them to keep smoothing out the edges, fixing the things, iterating more until it's better, getting it better and better. And sometimes it can take it so far that they don't even realize how good their stuff is to know to put it out there, put it in front of people, try putting it on the web, sharing it, giving it an audience, seeking feedback from strangers, etc. So you got to maybe play with the reality, the possibility that you might actually be a lot better than you give yourself credit for. But sometimes the only way to figure that out is to try applying it, putting it places, putting it in front of people, posting it where people can see it. And like I said, that extra little bump of bravery is maybe just as important a skill as any other thing about the craft itself. So put yourself out there, get it out there. You know what? That better too. Share it in the comments. Like I think some people worry that like, oh, it's gonna be, shouldn't be self-promoting or whatever. I'm gonna say for this particular video, and I don't usually even check sometimes the spam filter that YouTube gets clogged because there's just too many messages there. But for this particular video, I'll say like self-promote your stuff down below, especially obviously my treat myself family friendly. If it's PG, that's ideal. Nothing too crazy or threatening. But if you want to share something down in the comments, a link to your work, your music, your art, your games, please do. Your YouTube channel, whatever it is, share down below. I'm going to make a point of it, let's say maybe at least for the next couple weeks, after which is going to be in the backlog of YouTube videos. I'll check those. I'll review them as long as they seem okay-ish. Check the box, let it post. Let's share more of those things, put them out there, and maybe that can be the first step to you putting your work out in more places. Thanks for tuning in. I look forward to checking out your stuff when you link to it down below in the comments. Look forward to playing your games as well in the future, if you're a game developer. If you're not, again, I'll check it out in the comments. Bye for now.